This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. And joining us from Spotrac, he joined us to preview the first round series against Milwaukee Bucks. He's now here to help us preview the NBA Finals matchup between the Oklahoma City Thunder. It is Keith Smith from Spotrac. Keith, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm good, but I have to know, how good did that feel to say?
Oh, man.
Right? Like you guys got to be on cloud nine. It's just got to
We
be
are.
waking up every day so excited to, still be playing. It's super cool. I am so fired up for these finals specifically. Like I think it's going to be great. I'm really happy for you guys and happy for the Thunder fans, but I think they've known for a while that this was their end destination.
I think so.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Facci.
It's a fair point. I mean, look, like Keith, I know a lot of people are overlooking the Pacers, but since January 1st, these are the top two teams. So it's like it might be a surprise to some, but I mean, those that have been paying attention, maybe even the Thunder, might have been saying, hey, we just might see the Pacers down the road. So here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because the Pacers got off to that slow start, right? It was about a third of the season. They weren't playing all that great. And then I think people just kind of forgot. And then all of a sudden they hit their stride. Guys got healthy. They took off and then they've obviously that's carried into the playoffs and all the way through. So yeah, I mean this is going to be a really fun matchup.
Let's just look at this Pacers run here. Obviously, they go 12-4 in the Eastern Conference playoffs and really didn't have to sweat too much with any of their matchups, being able to go up 2-0 in every single series. When you look at this Pacers team, what has been the most impressive thing to you about their run?
I think it's that winning on the road. They obviously the insane comebacks, but that's hard to be impressed by because it still is like, how did those happen? Like the three wins that are like they just mind boggling. But going on the road and winning, even if it's in crazy circumstances or not, it's hard to do in the playoffs, and they've done it consistently, and they're going to need to do it again, right? If they want to win a championship. So but yeah, I think that combined with, I think we've seen this team, and I know you guys know this, but they've been better defensively as the years gone along. Like they've improved, and I think in the playoffs we've seen them go to a completely different level defensively, where they are still winning high scoring games, but they're locking in defensively in a way that we haven't seen kind of consistently from this group, and that's made all the difference.
It really has. It no longer needs to be 130 to 128 or anything like that. We saw some off the charts type of scoring games in the past where we're in the 150s, but we don't need to do that now. You can win a game at 112 points per game or anything of that sort. But kind of on the flip side, what have you seen from OKC that has made them so dangerous and really been able to, outside of the series against Denver, really kind of plow their way through in the playoffs?
Yeah, it's just that continued rolled over dominance from the regular season. I hope people took the time here in this break between games to really look and then appreciate how historically good this Thunder team has been. They have been incredible with the amount of blowouts that they've had, the defensive levels, the offense that they can put up. Just really just a special team. And that's rolled into the playoffs. Denver challenged them, which was great, right? And I think if they go on to win, we're going to hear them reference that, like getting that challenge from the Nuggets helped us get to where we need to be, one way or another, and that's huge. And now, you're looking at it as this team can play a lot of different ways. They can do a lot of different things. They can play big, they can play small, they can play slow, they can play fast. And again, that defense is just something else. The way they can lock in. I've never seen a team like this team flip a 5-point deficit to a 15-point lead faster than the way the Thunder do it. And it's often with live ball turnovers, getting out and running, getting in dunks and all the other stuff. And then when they're at home, the crowd gets going crazy. And I think they relish just as much when they're on the road and do it. And then the crowd is completely silenced and stunned. It's a special team in Oklahoma City.
When you look at both of these teams here with Indiana and OKC, you look at OKC, they like to play fast, but they're very good and one of the best defensive teams, where the Pacers are one of the best offensive teams where they don't turn the ball over much. When you see those two clash of styles a little bit, it does seem like, how do they match up against each other? And that's what I think is so intriguing about this series. But who do you think has the better advantage here? Is it the OKC defense or is it Indiana's offense and ability to get scoring from multiple different guys and not turn the ball over?
Yeah, I've been telling people since we knew the matchup, this is going to be a closer, more competitive series than I think the betting lines have and a lot of analysts have. And I think it's because of that part right there. The Thunder excel on being extremely physical and turning you over. Indiana takes care of the ball really, really well. And they've done that even at a better level in the playoffs than they did in the regular season. And I think what's been really good watching them is rarely does Rick Carlisle put a lineup on the floor that doesn't have 2 or 3 ball handlers on it, or sometimes even 4, maybe even 5 if they go really small. And that's huge because when the Thunder come with that pressure defense and they get handsy on the perimeter, there's 2 things you need to be able to do. You need to be able to beat it with the pass, and you need to be able to beat it off the bounce. And I think Indiana can do both of those things. They're going to have their outlets set. They're going to have their secondary guys ready to go. And I think that's going to be so important because that should allow them to not get turned over the way the Thunder like to turn teams over. They're going to cough it up some. Nobody plays perfect games, but it's you can't let it turn into 4 out of 5 possessions. You turned it over, and they were live ball turnovers, and they got run out shots on the other end. That's going to be a big part of the Pacers controlling this game.
Look, anyone can argue and say like, "Oh, OKC should win this" or anything, and I could say, "Hey, look, it's going to be a really tough series." But to your point before, does it feel a little bit premature to say it's -700 OKC? I mean, are we playing the 96 Chicago Bulls here? The way I look at this is a really good OKC team. It is, but it's also a really young team. Is there a point where maybe that youngness that could potentially, I don't know, hinder them a little bit? Like, I know the Pacers aren't the most veteran team, but this is a team that went to back-to-back, conference finals. You do have a Pascal Siakam who's been there before. You have a head coach that's been there before. You look at OKC being their youth. Do you think maybe that could hinder them a little bit in the series?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've done a pretty good job of answering the questions that have been put in front of them so far. But now it's time for one more on the biggest stage of all in the NBA, and that's huge for them. And you never know until you actually get there who's going to get tightened up, who's going to get all of a sudden the nerves hit and it hits in a way where they can't overcome it and figure it out. And that's going to be something that's going to be really fun to watch and figure out. And I think too with the Thunder, why I think it's premature. We talked about it when the Pacers have the ball. I think when the Thunder have the ball, one of the things that teams who have done well against them have been able to make work is pressuring Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and forcing other guys, not to necessarily beat them, but forcing other guys to just handle the ball. And I think you're going to see the Pacers put Nembhard and McConnell on him 94 feet and just say, do what you guys do. Be annoying. Be up in his face. Get in front of him, much like they did to Jalen Brunson for the bulk of that series against the Knicks. And that's going to be a little bit hard for the Thunder to answer. They're going to have to figure that out on the fly. And that's why I'm not a big betting lines guy, but I just think it's crazy to say, the Thunder are going to roll in here. It's going to be 4 or 5 games, and it's going to be a bunch of blowouts. I mean, there may be a blowout in there because sometimes you just can't make a shot and the other team gets going, and that's the nature of today's NBA. But I don't think this is going to be a string of blowouts and we're crowning the Thunder. The other last part I'll say, too, is I think a lot of people as much as people say they like parity, I think people also like dynasties, whether they like to root for them or against them. And I think people are very anxious to crown the Thunder as, they're a dynasty. And it's funny because a lot of people like them right now, and we know how that works. In a year or two, if it goes this way, everybody's going to hate them because they're going to be all the stupid barking that they do and all the, all the things that people think are cute right now, they'll hate within a year or two. And that's, how it went with the Warriors. That's how it's gone with a lot of teams. And I think there is a rush to let's crown them as the NBA's next dynasty and hand them all the titles from now through the next 4 years. And it's just, to me, that is way too early to go there.
Yeah, I mean, this is an OKC team that is very, very talented. 80 wins right now after the postseason and regular season, plus the MVP of both the Western Conference playoffs and then, of course, the league. So Shai is just incredible. But speaking of SGA, you talked about the Pacers maybe guarding him 94 feet, really making him work for it. But if you look at the other 3 series the Pacers have had, they kind of let Giannis do his thing and let him kind of get his own. They let Donovan Mitchell become this heliocentric scorer and get all of his. And then for the most part, it was Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns kind of taking turns, but it was always just one of them kind of carrying the load for that offense and not a lot of other guys really pitching in. Is there a way that Indiana can survive allowing SGA to get around 35, 40 points a game, but trying to eliminate maybe your Jalen Williams or your Chet Holmgrens and just really kind of staying home and funneling SGA to be this massive scorer?
A lot easier said than done. And I think the challenge is that's kind of how the Thunder play anyway. SGA has also become really, really good at finding stuff late in the clock. So it'll be like, all right, he's going to take we did it. We defended him for 20 seconds out of the shot clock. Now we've got him. He's going to take a contested mid-ranger. And then next thing you know, here comes Chet Holmgren on a ducking cut out of the corner. And he sets him up and, it's a lob dunk or whatever it may be. Those are the things you have to be really careful of. It sounds great to say, let's kind of let him get his. We'll lock in on everybody else. But you have to be able to actually execute that and stay tight to those guys for the long periods of time. Otherwise, that's where you run into a little bit of trouble, because then you fall asleep with 2 seconds left on the clock. Now they've got a bucket, and that can be the hard thing. But I think there's going to be some of that. I think the big thing is make him work for it, right? It's going to be don't give anything easy. Try to stay locked on with you guys. I think they're going to throw a lot of different looks at him. I mentioned Nembhard and McConnell pressing him the full floor, but I think Nesmith will pick him up some. I think Shepard will pick him up some, just to give a little bit of size. They'll switch guys on him too if they need to. I think the one guy they probably want to keep off him as much as possible is Halliburton, just because of the foul drawing that he does. You just want to avoid that. But I think they're going to show a lot of different looks on him throughout the course of this series.
Look, if you win 80 plus games, you're going to have a lot of strengths. Is there maybe a weakness or so that you can think of that it's like, hey, while we don't have a large sample size, maybe something that Denver was able to exploit a little bit that was able to push the series to 7?
Yeah, they're not the best shooting team at all times. Sometimes they can go in these real slumps where it's like, man, they're just not knocking down free throws. Or excuse me, 3-pointers the way they want. They knock down free throws, but the funny thing is, for as much as everyone has screamed and yelled about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, free throw merchant, and all this stuff, nobody else really draws free throws on this team. It's him, and that's it. So as long as you can stay disciplined and not give fouls on other guys and get yourself in the bonus early, you can kind of choke off some of their offense. So those are the things you're looking for. They are a good shooting team in general, but they go through these long slumps. And that's where I think the Pacers' ability to just keep pushing, right? We saw it against the Knicks, which, coaches are going to make that Knicks series required viewing for horrible transition defense. Like, you should not be getting scored on layups after made baskets. Like, that's insane. And the number of times that happened was crazy. The Thunder are a better defensive team than the Knicks by leaps and bounds, but you have to keep pushing at them. You can't ever at any point be like, all right, we got the stop. Now we can breathe. You got to get out there and run and steal easy offense as best you can.
Aside from SGA, who do you think is the most important player on Oklahoma City in this series, and why do you think that person is the most important?
Yeah, the easy choice would be Jalen Williams, right? He's the other All-NBA guy. He's really, really good. But for me, it's Chet Holmgren, because I think they're going to have to play small quite a bit in this series in order to match up with the Pacers on the perimeter and not give up too much. Isaiah Hartenstein, very, very good player, very good defender. But there's matchups within in Indiana's lineup constructions where they can really take advantage of him and get him outside and force him to defend out around the arc, and he doesn't really want to do that. With Holmgren, he has to be able to hold up as the lone big, and he does a pretty good job of that. But he's going to have to do that in lineups where he's being targeted as somebody who's going to have to defend and defend on the move. And then he has to continue to deliver offensively, because if he's not delivering offensively, all of a sudden what you're going to see is Indiana's going to start to pack the paint against those SGA drives. They're going to close off some of those driving lanes. They're going to send gap help. And if Holmgren's not able to hold up defensively and make his jump shots, it's going to be tough for them to get enough offense on the board.
People have knocked Indiana's depth, saying like it's just too many guys that play, but they have 6 players averaging in double-figure scoring in the playoffs. Is their depth sort of defying what teams have historically done in the past, where you shorten your rotation? We've seen that if Indiana shortened their rotation, they actually wouldn't be playing to their strengths.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. And I think what Rick Carlisle does is his lineup balance is always pretty good. I talked about always having multiple ball handlers out there, but rarely do they go long stretches without two or three guys who can also create their own looks at least a semi decent level. Obviously, Halliburton can do that, Siakam can do that, but I think Nemhard can do that. And then Benedict Mathurin, what's been really interesting to me with him is we saw at times where Carlisle went away from him, and he's like, "I'm going with other guys instead. I'm going to go with Ben Shepherd to give me more minutes and play longer than you." But then there were other times when Mathurin, he had the one game he played like 12 minutes and took like 14 free throws or whatever it was, and we see him say, "All right, go ahead." Let's go. And I think he's really smart about how and when he uses guys, and that allows him to play a lot of guys. But if you really get deep into it, some of those guys, they may only be out there for 8 minutes, 10 minutes, but it's 8, 10 good, hard minutes that they're giving Indiana. And that's big, especially, when you talk about these, they didn't have to play too many super long series. But I don't even care if you're in series somewhat early. Playoffs are still a grind because it's every other day. Now in the finals, you have the extra days off. But for the most part, they're going to be, able to leverage that depth. I think somewhat, well, the challenge is, they're going up against maybe the other deepest team in the NBA as far as the number of guys they play.
You talked about Chet Holmgren being the second most important Oklahoma City Thunder player. I'm not sure how the matchups are going to play out to start things off if the Thunder do go big, but it does seem like there could be a possibility he does guard Pascal Siakam to start things out there at that 4-versus-4 position. How much do you think Pascal's veteran, experience can take advantage of a second-year player who is very talented, but Pascal's got such a herky-jerky game, and I feel like he could really put him in the blender at times.
Yeah, and that's the perfect way to describe it. It's all those spins and spin backs and the quick inside out dribbles, all the stuff he does. He's tremendous footwork for Siakam, and that's going to be the challenge, making Holmgren defend him on the move. Whether it's getting out and running on fast breaks in the half court, breaking him down out of isolations, or defending him out of pick and roll type plays. And the other nice thing is Siakam's a pretty good decision maker and passer, so you'll see him pretty regularly, even when you get into stuff, he'll make the right read. I think they might throw some wrinkles there. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Holmgren or Hartenstein defending Nesmith, where it becomes, or maybe even Nemhard, and they may say, "Hey, you hit 6 3-pointers. We'll tip our cap and say, do it again in game 2. Do it again the next game out." And then that way they could put Jalen Williams, who does do pretty good defending bigger forwards who work off the bounce a lot, put him on Siakam. Whoever the other big, one of the two bigs will then defend Turner. And then you kind of also leave a big in help position, because if you're going to cheat off the guys as shooters, that's where it'll go. And that's where I think it's going to be really important to make sure McConnell's in the right spots in this series too when he gets out there, because I think you'll see the Thunder pretty aggressively ignore him whenever he's behind the arc. And that's not to say he needs to all of a sudden become a 3-point shooter, because he's just not going to. But that's where you got to keep the ball in his hands, get him downhill, play him even in the dunker spot some there, and that'll be big. But in that opening, I think there's going to be a lot of cross matching that we see in those opening lineup matchups.
If you're trying to pull an upset, is there anyone maybe better for this type of job than Rick Carlisle, who's been there before? I mean, second go around in the NBA Finals, won a championship, pulled a big upset over the Miami Heat, a team that really not a lot of people, gave. Rick didn't get a lot of credit going into that series as, oh, you're going to beat the big three and LeBron, Wade, and Bosh and all that. But I feel like to combat OKC's talent and what Rick's been able to do round after round, I feel like has he maybe changed the perception of himself at this stage as, hey, he is still one of the best coaches in the game?
Yeah, I think so. I think, anybody who questions it now is, way, way off base. He came to the Pacers when he came in. It was a little bit of a weird time where they were resetting quite a bit of the roster, and then improved them pretty well a year later. And then obviously last year's team took major steps forward, and now we're even one step further this year. He's a terrific coach, and I thought you saw in the last 2 series, I don't want to disrespect the Bucks and say the Pacers didn't have to work to win that series, because they did, but it wasn't overly challenging for them there. But the Cavs and the Knicks Rick Carlisle had to do different stuff with his lineups. Like I said, at points he went away from Matherin. There were times when he got into it and he was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to some funky zone looks and we'll throw little weird things out there that way. We're going to go into some stuff where we start, we'll play with one big on the floor. I'm going to go to Tony Bradley, and it's funny because I saw a number of people like, even though Tony Bradley was still in the league, and here he is, playing major minutes. And I think those are the big things that he can do, and he does them because he has the confidence of, I've done this for a very long time with a lot of teams. And I think what's really cool is, I guarantee if they haven't had the conversation yet, they're going to have it by Thursday before we get on the floor for game one. There's going to be hey, I've been here before with the Mavericks against the unbeatable Heat team. And you know what we did? We beat them. Just go out there and play, let things go. It doesn't matter what anybody says, how any of that stuff's going down. Let's just make it happen.
The Pacers were, I think, 30th in offensive rebounding in the regular season. They're right there with Milwaukee. Remember, they were the two worst teams in offensive rebounding. But the Thunder are not a great rebounding team. And if they do go smaller, how much do you think Indiana could maybe change that philosophy they have and start being more of a team that attacks the offensive glass?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because in part, you want to do that, but why coaches who don't have teams that offensive rebound well? It's generally because they don't want to crash and leave those runouts available to the other side. In the Thunder, just like the Pacers are, they'll take them, right? They will kick the ball ahead, and the next thing you know, it's a layup on you. But that said, I think you be selective with it. Obviously, Neesmith, I mean, we in Boston, they all called him Crash. I know he does not like that nickname, but send him, right? Send him, from the corner. Let him get in there and do some stuff, keeping the ball alive. I think both Bryant and Bradley had moments where it was get inside, keep the ball alive. I think even Miles Turner, who probably the low down on the list of the things he does well is rebounding, especially on the offensive end. He had multiple plays where he kept balls alive. And I think you can do that against this Thunder team. And it's just a way to, again, they're so good defensively. You have to steal offense however you can get it, get the ball up the floor quickly, getting early offense is one way. And yeah, if you can get second chance opportunities, go for it. I just don't know that they'll fully sell out that way, because I think that goes against what they've kind of been trained to do. And it sounds good to say you pull it out, but when everything's been working this way for 100 games, now all of a sudden, hey, let's do this completely different thing. That can be really hard on players to pull off.
I don't necessarily know exactly how the Thunder are in the clutch. What I do know is that they've had a lot of blowouts where they have not needed to be in the clutch. This Pacers team is as clutch as it gets. You can't count them out. They have 4 comebacks of 17 points or more in this playoffs alone. Multiple game winners. They've erased deficits that we shouldn't see happen again, yet the Pacers have done it numerous times, whether it's 7-10 points where it's about a minute left. Does it feel like if the game gets close, maybe this is something that could favor the Pacers because they've been there so many more times than an OKC team that maybe doesn't really know how to execute perfectly with 30 seconds left and you're down 6 or anything of that sort?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's something to be said for pulling these games out repeatedly and executing in the clutch and making things happen. And I try to be a little more, I don't want to say rational because that sounds like I'm picking on the other people, but a little more analytical in my approach, where I don't buy necessarily into a lot of team of destiny stuff. And these are the things, but there's a little bit of team of destiny feel with the Pacers right now, where it does feel a little bit like, man, they're winning these games that you're not supposed to win. Like if you went in and pitched some of the endings of those games to a TV show, one, they'd probably love it because all sports TV shows are stupid and do ridiculous stuff. But if you had anybody in there who knew what they were talking about, they'd be like, no, it's unrealistic. Like, don't go away. Nobody will believe this is how it's happening. And that's what it's been over and over and over again. And that's where you do feel like if it's close, I would look at the Pacers and Carlisle basically looking at the guys and saying, all right, we're here again. Let's go do what we do. I thought that crazy comeback against the Knicks, the one where the ball was in the air for, I swear, a full minute before it dropped in. I was worried when they celebrated because they thought they won. And then when it was, hey, it's only tied, right? Like, now we got to go back out and play. And they fell behind. It was either 4 or 5 right away in the overtime. And I was like, oh no, like they just don't. do they have it? The way they kind of came back pretty quickly and then took control and cruised out, I was like, all right, this is it. This team has it. Like they can go win a title. Like at that point for me was where I was convinced that they could go do it. I don't know that they will, but I think they've got it in them that they could.
That was the craziest game I've ever seen as
Oh
a
my
Pacers
God.
fan. I mean, that shot was unbelievable. And then you talk about the non-goaltending call that Miles Turner maybe got away with there against Brunson, which would have made it a 6-point game. Indiana goes on a fast break, and Nemhard hits that three to cut it to 1. So you go from a 6-point deficit to a 1-point deficit. I mean, everything had to go right for the Pacers in the end there with those challenge calls and everything. I mean, it was just like you said, a team of destiny. Like, I could not believe how all that happened. But speaking of OKC's defense, obviously there's a lot of great things that they have, but their ball defenders, I guess you'd call it, with Caruso and Cason Wallace, and of course Lou Dort, and even SGA at times. Like, these are guys that can just really make it difficult. And we've never seen the Pacers play a team that's this talented defensively. And even if you go back looking at last year when Caruso was on the Bulls, I mean, he made life a living hell for Tyrese Halliburton just in that one-on-one matchup. Now you got 3 different guys that can throw at him. So how do you think Indiana can kind of counter what they do defensively?
You got to be quick. You got to move the ball very, very quickly. And that's not a pace thing. That's even in the half court. You can't be loose with your dribble. Your passes can't be lazy. Everything's got to be with zip, right? And an old ploy coaches used to do in these types of situations was have you play against 6 defenders to see can you keep the ball moving enough to stay ahead of the defense, because that's what it feels like with the Thunder at times. And they've got all these long arm defenders too that all of a sudden they're all over the place, and it's like, yeah, how are they covering that when they just trapped? How do they have the backside corner covered too? And that can be tough, but you got to move the ball quick. You got to have good player movement too. You can't be. It's tough because you don't want to have everybody just running around to move. You got to move with purpose. You can't be cutting into each other. You got to make your moves the right ones. And then when the right thing for you to do is stay rooted to your spot, make sure you pull that off. But that's the single biggest way. Pacers fans are going to hate the Thunder by halftime of game 1 because they're going to be like, they're so handsy, they're so physical. But part of their thing is they're one of those teams that we'll dare you to call, we'll follow you 10 times because we know they're not going to call 10 fouls. But they're also really smart with when they get physical. They get physical in places where they tend to allow you to be a little bit more physical. And that's going to be something they're going to have to overcome. But I think speed of ball and player movement is going to be so huge in this series.
Is there I know we talked about maybe some weaknesses, but just say if the Thunder, outside of injuries, of course, if Thunder are to blow this series, it is because of, what do you think could 1 or 2 reasons maybe be?
Yeah, I could make enough shots. I think that's what it'll ultimately come down to. As good as the Thunder defense is, good offense always beats good defense in the NBA, and the Pacers are an outstanding offense. They're gonna score points. I don't know that it's gonna be 130, but they're gonna play into the hundreds. They're gonna be up there. And that's when, if the Thunder can't also match that because they're not knocking down enough shots, that's where they'll get themselves in trouble. It's gonna be kind of hard from that respect for them at times. It's just gonna be, can they get the right combination on the night where they can't make shots? Is their defense otherworldly? Because if it is, well, that'll cancel it and call it out. But if they're not making shots for 2-3 games in the series, all of a sudden the margin tightens up quite a bit.
For fans that maybe haven't watched a lot of OKC and they know Jalen Williams is a household name, but they don't really know much about his game, what are some things that the Pacers fans should be looking out for to see with what he can do in this series?
Yeah, he's super strong with the ball. He's really good. I think some people are thinking, all right, we'll throw Nesmith on him and that'll be good enough. The problem for Nesmith, he'll be quick enough, but I don't know if he has quite enough strength. Williams is really strong. He likes to get to a spot, put the shoulder into a guy, and play through contact. He really welcomes it. He's also a really smart player. I talked about SGA as a latent clock passer. Williams is that guy too. He when he goes up, you can see there's times it's almost a little bit like Halliburton. He's not on that level as a passer, but where Halliburton will go up and you're kind of like, what's he doing? And then he had the pass. He knew where he was going with it. Williams has a little bit of that in his game. And then defensively, he is outstanding. He's really long, sets a good, strong base. He's quick. That's why I think he's going to see a lot of reps on Siakam, whether it's the open games or just when they go to a single big. I think he'll play him a lot. But yeah, really, really good player.
Yeah, just maybe some bigger picture things. Just kind of looking at the Thunder team. They're in the NBA Finals. They're heavy favorites to win it. You got the MVP, and you still have a boatload of draft picks. I mean, if you're the Thunder right now, like, what do you do? We've seen before in the Pacers, you can only have so many draft picks. There's not really enough spots. Indiana was in a spot a couple years ago, having 3 draft picks in one draft, and it didn't really work out. You had to trade back for a few years, whatever. They end up dealing picks for Siakam. You look at this Thunder team, like, where do they really go from here if they are to win?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been talking about it before the Pacers even had it sealed, but when they're up 3-1, and I said, if this pans out, this is going to be our first finals where neither team was a taxpayer. For first time it's happened since the luxury tax has been a thing in the NBA, and that's incredible that we're here now. When I really dug deeper into it on the Thunder side, because a lot of people counter with, well, that's only going to be for one more, this is it. Next year they're there. They're not. They're going to be fine for at least one more year, maybe even beyond that, because next year Holmgren and Williams are still finishing out their rookie scale contracts. They've got one more year left on those guys. So we're really talking about 26, 27 is maybe when that stuff starts to come home to roost. And they're going to lose some guys. They're going to lose some players, probably some fan favorites. Some guys are going to be moved on from, maybe Lou Dort, maybe Alex Caruso in a couple years, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe. But those guys are all on tradable contracts. They can all be moved. And what they'll do is, all right, now we got to pick. We draft the next guy. We draft and develop. And that's how they're going to be able to lengthen this window out a little bit. In the more immediate time, like, they have 2 first-round picks this year in this draft, and they don't even really have an open roster spot. And I think what you're going to see them do is they'll move on from somebody and use one of the picks. Then I think the second pick, it'll be almost New England Patriots like, where it'll be kick the can down the road, right? We're going to trade this one for a future first and a future second. And we'll just kind of keep moving it down the line. And that's where Sam Presti will kind of rebuild some of his draft stash, but just give it more balance. Because like you said, you can't roster everybody. It sounds awesome to have 15 draft picks in a 5-year window until it's like, there's only 15 roster spots. Unless they successfully champion the NBA to let them carry 25 guys on their roster, can't use all the picks anyway. So, but that's also where, much like you said, but the Pacers got aggressive with, got some extra picks. Let's go get Pascal Siakam. They'll be able to do that too. If there's somebody they really feel like can fill a need for them, they're going to be able to pull that off.
The offseason is just around the corner. I know we're talking about the NBA Finals, but in terms of the offseason, it's right there. I mean, you told us you've been working diligently trying to get prepared for everybody's, numbers and things like that, their cap space and players that could be available. But it seems like there's going to be a lot of movement based on what different people are reporting. How much movement do you actually think there's going to be in this offseason?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot. And I think it's going to be via trade. On our show, NBA Front Office Show, we've been calling it Summer of the Trade, because that's going to be how things have to get done. One, only the Nets have significant cap space this summer. The Pistons can get to some, but they're probably going to use it to re-sign their guys. The Grizzlies could get to a little bit, but it'll probably be used to renegotiate and extend Jaren Jackson Jr. So now that leaves the Nets, who have been very clear they're not looking to shortcut this thing. They're in rebuild phase. They're going to build this thing back up slowly. So you add that to the fact that the free agent class stinks. There's barely any good free agents. You've got one of them in Indiana, but the rest are pretty rough across the board. So then that means if teams want to improve, how do we get there? You're going to have to do it through trade. What factors into that becomes a couple things. One, the league feels pretty open. As much as we're getting a lot of, well, the Thunder aren't going anywhere, and they probably aren't. I don't know that anybody feels like, man, this seems unbeatable. And they're, how are we ever going to get there with them? So when you get into that point is, all right, well, we can challenge. Great season for the Pacers, but I don't know that a lot of teams in the East are like, they're unbeatable. This is not Warriors Cavs, where in August you could write it in as the finals, check back in June and be like, hey, I was right. Cool. Like, it's Warriors Cavs again. The league's open. Now I'll add 2 other components. You have stars available, or at least expected to be available. KD, we definitely know available. Giannis, we'll see what happens. But you've got a handful of other guys that have been mentioned out there. And you've got these second apron teams that are like Boston. We're going to probably see a little bit of a gap year out of them, we're going to take a little bit of a step back. We're going to shed some money. That's going to put a lot of players available. And because you have these teams gearing up, like, hey, why not us? Why can't we be the Pacers next year? Be the unexpected team in the finals. I think you're going to see teams trying to load up to go for it. And that's going to lead to, I think, a pretty crazy offseason.
I think it's going to be a fun offseason. I think, yeah, like you mentioned, there's no team that has this like, oh my God, no one can beat them. Everyone can be in it, and any team can make a run. And you look at this OKC and the Pacers just 2-3 years ago. I mean, they weren't even in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And look at them now. And I think it just shows that there's many different ways to be able to get there. So hopefully, you mentioned both teams being non-taxpayers. Hopefully, that's something that gives some of those smaller market teams that opportunity to say, why not? Why can't we go for it? So, but as we wrap up, my final question for you, give it to us straight, Keith. What is your prediction in this series? We will not be offended however you go about it, but I want to hear the truth.
Yeah, I said good, long, competitive series. I'll be shocked if this is over in less than 6. If it is, something really went wrong for one of the two teams. I am picking the Thunder. I was close to picking them over the Celtics even preseason, and I thought I think Boston will run it back and get it done one more time before they take a step backwards. That obviously got accelerated, but I am picking Thunder in 6. I don't like to pick a team to win a series on the road, but it feels like the right length of games to me. I also don't think either one of these teams is going to be overwhelmed by going on the road. Both teams have played in really difficult environments already. Indiana's coming. They were just in New York. It's not the Thunder have a great crowd, but it's not going to get any harder on them than it is in New York. I had Knicks fans telling me, yeah, it felt good to beat Boston, but man, we hate the Pacers just because there's so much history there. And you could tell with that. So, but I think it's going to be a good, long, close series. I always hope for 7 by the time we get here, because there's only a max of 7 NBA games left in the season, and I want as many of them as I can. But I think it's going to be an awesome series. The one game I'm worried about is game 1. Both teams have been off for a while. I'm a little worried that it just might be a little sloppy. I know the Pacers had challenges even getting into Oklahoma City with some severe weather, and hopefully everybody on the ground there is all okay and doing well. But it might be a little sloppy in game 1, which actually probably helps Indiana's chances, because if it's a little sloppy, they might be able to get pull out a win that's maybe unexpected. But I think it's going to be an awesome finals.
Yeah, I would say this. The Pacers have done pretty good when they've had longer rest periods. It's been kind of interesting because you usually think teams are a little bit rusty after being off for so long, but the Pacers have done a pretty good job of not letting that happen and be the case. But yeah, I will tell you this, though. With Tyrese Haliburton healthy, the Pacers have not lost back-to-back games since December. So they haven't played OKC 7 times, though, in a row, so that's a little different. But I do think that it is something to keep an eye on, because they've done a very good job of not losing multiple games in a row. And I think Rick Carlisle and his coaching staff, they just make the right adjustments to make everything so much more difficult for the opponent.
One thing I'll add too, NBA Finals games are a little weird, but players always talk about it. Boston talked last year about having gone a couple years before with a lot of the same players helped them. They're just the introduction period takes longer. The timeouts are a little bit longer. Like everything is just a little longer than what they're used to. And NBA players are such creatures of habit, where it is, I go out and shoot when there's 20 minutes left on the clock, in these things. And if that turns into, man, I went out and shot, but then they did this full long introduction thing, like that turns into, man, I'm a little out of my rhythm. And that could take a little bit to get used to. And then obviously couple guys have been there before on these teams, but nobody's been there in a while. It's been a long time, and that's where that can also add to a little bit of the weirdness of the first game or two.
Yep, I think it's going to be a really exciting series. It feels weird to have such long gaps without these games. I feel like, although it hasn't been terribly long, it feels like the Pacers haven't played in like a full week now, and I don't know what to do with my time anymore.
Yeah, the playoffs condition you too every other night.
Oh yeah,
and then all of a sudden it's like, and now here's a week off, and then we're gonna play every third night, and it's like, what are we doing? But yeah, exactly. The nice thing is finals games, you tend to need an extra little bit to recover from them, so it works out okay.
Hey, I'm hoping things are going well where we're eager for the next game and not, kind of, dreading it a little bit. But I think the Pacers will be ready. I think they've already shocked some people. Got to keep shocking the world. We thrive as underdogs. But Keith, as we sign off, please tell everybody where they could find you on social media and some of the incredible content that you're putting out for this off season that we've already talked about is going to be incredible.
Yeah, it's you can find me at spottrack.com. We're in the middle of all of our off-season preview stuff. Team previews are going up. Pacers will either be team 29 or 30. We're hoping for 30, right? So, if they're 30, because we go in order of elimination, and team 30 is the last team standing. So we'll see where they fall. So we got a while before we're going to get to them, but off-season previews are going up by position as well. We're through the point guards, shooting guards, and small forwards. Those are all up there. You can read. I wrote a little blurb on every possible free agent, all like 200 of them that are out there. There's a little bit on all of them. That includes all the two-way guys and guys on team options that are restricted at the end. I spend a lot of time prepping for the summer every year so that when we get there, when a player is a free agent, they're signed, I at least know a little something about every one of them. And then NBA front office show with Trevor Lane and I, where we're in kind of 3 days a week at this time, but we'll pick it up in the off season. Sounds a little weird. Off season, we could do more, but our show is about transactions, news, rumors, all that stuff. So we'll be doing a lot of shows. We'll be doing a lot more live shows and stuff as things start coming out. So a lot of good stuff to come all over the place.
Looking forward to it. That's a must to check out. Keith, until next time, I know this ain't our last time this year. I'm sure we'll be back in the off season to discuss some of that awesome news that you discussed. But thanks again, and hey, wish us luck.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. I'm rooting for you. All the best to you guys. Enjoy it. No matter what, enjoy it, right? It's the final. This has been awesome, and enjoy the run.